everybody, it's Justin Berg with Purple Care, and we're doing lawn therapy today. And today, as my guest, I've got Lisa Whittlesey with Texas A&M. I'm very excited about this because of what you do with children, the programs. You've written books. You've been on TV. I mean, I'm very excited about this guest. So tell me what you do for Texas A&M. Tell me what you're passionate about, and tell me more about the programs you've created.
Oh, awesome. Well, this is exciting to be able to share what I love. A little bit about me. My background is I was fortunate to grow up in a small town with loving parents and grandparents and all those things. And so I was around nature. We gardened, we did all those kinds of things. And when I came to Texas A&M, I guess I didn't really initially think about horticulture as kind of a career because I'd done it all my life, right, at home. And then I went down there and I thought, well, I'm going to end up, maybe teaching horticulture or doing something like that. And what I found is that a lot of people didn't have that same experience that I had. They didn't have that connection to the earth, right? And connection to plants, connection to nature, whether it's plants or animals or whatever. And so that really struck a chord with me when I was doing my student teaching in Houston. I mean, so many of the kids I had in my classroom, like they'd never seen stuff growing. It kind of blew my mind a little
That's
bit.
crazy, isn't it, to think about that?
I mean, because that was such a part of who I was. But I think that in the back of my mind, that really put me on a course of, okay, I want to do something that literally plants a seed in other people. No horticultural pun, but plants a seed and can spur people to want to experience the joys and the beauty of the creation that's around us. So, that's kind of the philosophical part of Lisa is just,
I love it.
I wanted to be able to do something to make a difference. And in horticulture, is a vehicle to be able to do that. I've had several jobs within AgriLife Extension. My first was teaching at the Women's Federal Prison. And that was quite an experience.
Very interesting.
I was like, I didn't expect that that's where I would end up teaching. But what I saw is it was a minimum security facility. And I had students in my class that had never planted anything. Just like when I did my student teaching, they'd never planted anything. They'd never watched things grow. And what I saw was a change in them as adults that, being able to care for something and nurture something and to be outside. I would have students tell me, when I'm here in the greenhouse or in the garden, I don't feel like I'm in prison. Right?
Wow, what a powerful statement.
Right. And like we were turning compost and one of the students said, we take all this yucky stuff and we turn it into something wonderful for the plants and for the garden. And, I have a lot of yucky stuff in my life and maybe I can turn it into something great. And I thought, that's a great analogy, right? But a lot of them, I just saw
intelligent reflection. I mean, think about, here's a person that's incarcerated. What an intelligent reflection. And how powerful is that to you? I mean, that had to make you say, I'm coming back.
Of course. Well, and, I tell students now, I teach a class and I tell students, find something that you enjoy doing that makes a difference, right? And then it's not work. It's your life mission. It's your life story. I mean, I just use gardening and horticulture as a way to be able to do that. But my students, I saw this kind of epiphany with them, and a lot of them wanted to garden with their children. And, some of them, their children were able to come occasionally and visit. And they're like, we really need, I was looking in extension, we just didn't have a lot of materials for kids related to gardening. And so I had a friend that was really good at fundraising, and I said, "Hey, we need a program like the Adult Master Gardener program, but for kids, to get them outside, to get them excited about working with plants, to give them the opportunity to share what they learn with others, to develop leadership." And that sounds great. Let's write it up and see if we can get some funding for it. And so that's really how the whole Junior Master Gardener program
So
started.
that's where that seed started, was actually in prison.
In prison,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's kind of a roundabout way of talking about what I do now. I coordinate the Junior Master Gardener program. It's an international program. When I started, I thought, this is going to be something that'll be good for Texas. It'll be good for my students. And it very quickly started growing, and A&M moved me from teaching at the prison to campus. Our program's now 25 years old,
Congratulations.
and we have programs in all 50 states, and we have programs in 10 countries. And so, wow, I mean, not often sometimes you plant.
And you started that program. So you have a
Yeah,
program that literally went nationwide and international. You started a
yeah,
program that you got to be proud about that. That's
yeah.
really
Well,
amazing.
and I say this because um, you surround yourself with really good people. You know what I'm saying? It's not, I mean, I had the start of an idea, but it was surrounding yourself with a team of people that can make it happen. People that can help bring in money, excellent teachers that can collaborate and work together to come up with ideas. And so, it wasn't just one person. I was lucky enough to kind of be the person maybe steering the ship a little bit. But yeah, super, super
Who started
fun.
that? Was it A&M that wanted to go inside the prison, or was it the penal system that said, "Hey, we'd like you to come here"? Do you know how that started?
Yeah, the prison actually contacted our horticulture department and said, we have, there was a greenhouse already there on site, and it had kind of gotten in disrepair. And they said, we really would like to have a horticultural program there for our students, for the inmates, and would like to have it as an educational piece as part of our educational program. So that's really where it, kind of started. And I still, even though I work with the children's programming is my main job, because of my background, I still do a lot within corrections, because we have some of our county programs that may work with juvenile facilities or may work with county jail facilities, or I've done some stuff with the Texas, Department of Criminal Justice with some of their educational programs. And so, it's always a soft space for me, because, when you work there and you see the difference that it makes in people, it changes your view.
Yeah.
And, um, I think before I went to prison to teach, your idea of who is an inmate may be very different, right?
I'm sure.
And, when I think of inmates, I don't think of numbers. I think of Mary and Sue and Kim and the students that I had. And the cool thing is, a lot of them are working in horticulture.
Right.
A lot of them are in our industry doing great. They haven't gone back to prison. They've turned their life around. They've literally taken trash to treasure, like the compost, analogy. But that was a pretty cool thing. And so, being able to see that and then do the same sort of things with children is pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's very telling about you as a person, I think, that you don't call them inmates, you don't call them prisoners, you call them students.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
they were my students.
yes, they have 100% worse. So I think but it's very telling you can tell that is how you saw them. I think that's a very fair thing to call them to them. I mean, and it would also be somewhat empowering to them, because I'm sure that they were maybe not handled that way during the rest of the day, but they were by you, and it gave them a little
Yeah.
bit of hope. So that's pretty cool. That's very, very interesting. Did you ever see by chance any of your uh, prison students become your actual students here at A&M? Did you ever see that come back, or like, did they actually, come back and enroll in school?
I haven't seen them here, although one of my students' son was coming to A&M, and she looked me up. She came by my office to see me because her son was coming here to be an Aggie, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was presenting about the Junior Master Gardener program at a state lawn and garden show in another state, and my name was on the program and everything. And 5 of my former students were there. They didn't know each other because they were incarcerated at different times. And they all came up to me afterwards, and they were all working for companies that had, booze and, stuff there at the lawn and garden show. So that was pretty cool. Got to go and have dinner with them and hear about what was going on in their lives. So, you know, that was a neat kind of special moment. Sometimes,
Yeah, how gratifying.
sometimes you plant seeds and you don't get to see what happens. And I tell my students now that I teach that sometimes we plant seeds for trees that we may not ever sit
Right,
under. You
right.
know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But
Good analogy.
yeah, but sometimes every once in a while you really get to see the tree that they become, which is pretty cool.
Very cool. I think you're an amazing woman. Just for all the things you've got some books here that I know that you want to maybe go at. I'd like to jump into that. Some of the ones that have you co-authored or authored these completely,
Yeah,
or
well, no, and let me start with, when we were kind of starting the Junior Master Gardening program, I mean, I hope kids learn a lot about gardening, horticulture, science, all the stuff, right? Because I mean, that's my degrees are in that. My background's in education too. I wanted it to be a great learning experience, but I think the tenet of our program, our energy line is growing good kids.
mm-hmm.
And that's really the focus is about growing good kids and growing good kids and igniting a passion in them for learning, for being successful, and for service. So giving back to their community. And we use gardening as a vehicle, as a way to do that. And so, um, yeah, I mean, I've written curricula, I've brought together curricula teams with this, but I think that keeping true to our mission and what our focus is, which is really that, okay, this is great. We want to teach kids. We want to do things. We want to have wonderful, enriching opportunities for kids to learn. But ultimately, it's about growing kids. And I think that having that in the back of the mind, it really sometimes changes the emphasis that you place on certain things. And it really helps to keep you razor focused on what's important.
Sure,
So,
sure. I know that the studies are out, and I do a lot of research in this area, but of just the value of getting people back outside. And I think even as a society, we're getting sicker because we're inside so much and we're in front of the blue, the screens and all the blue light. I mean, those studies are out. That's not like hocus pocus or fiction anymore. I mean, we know that children, it's very detrimental to children who are on social media constantly. And they're even saying that, we probably shouldn't give our kids phones until they're into high school. And I actually really believe in that. I think that's correct. Giving kids a phone at 9 years old is, I mean,
a disaster.
It is a disaster.
A disaster.
Now, and I'm not going to call you out as a parent if you've done that, but the studies are there. The information is there. You've got to, now granted, you got to pick up a book, you got to pick up an article and read it, but tell me more about just, kind of the things you know about in that area where you know how healthy it is and the benefits of getting these kids back outside.
Right. Especially I would say probably the last 10 years, there's been so much emphasis, I think, on just the poor health, if you will, and not just physical health, but mental health, right, of our children. Um, we have a lot of different curricula pieces, but we kept hearing, and seeing this just focus on how could we integrate gardening, nutrition, physical activity, and health. And so we have one of our thematic curricula is called Learn, Grow, Eat, Go. And so they learn, they grow, they eat, and then they're physically active. So it kind of goes with the parts of the curricula. And that particular curricula was part of a big research study. So we got a $5 million USDA grant that we partnered with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and A&M and our School of Public Health and the University of Texas School of Public Health. And we really wanted to look at that deeper. Doing any kind of big research study can be very expensive. And so for that study, we implemented that curricula, but we were able to follow children for 2 years. And so we did this in different locations across Texas. And we did both surveys that the kids completed, but we also did, height and weight. We looked at their BMI, and these were kids that were in Title I schools. So these were greater than 50% on free and reduced lunches. Many of those kids were identified as obese or overweight. So there was a huge issue there. The other thing we wanted to see is, could them doing this program at school cause a reach into the home? Because we know the home environment, as you mentioned, that's so important. And so we followed those kids. So they did the program in third grade. We followed them to the end of fourth grade. And I mean, some of it was amazing. Number one, if they grow it, they're more likely to eat it. Well, I mean, most of us are like, well, that's no surprise.
Right.
But I mean, we really have the research that shows that. And
Right.
we know that for children to accept a new fruit or vegetable, they have to have multiple exposures.
Yeah.
So
Isn't it like 11 or 14 times? It's a higher number.
it's a higher number. So, growing it is one, caring for it is another, right? And then being able to taste it raw. So we encourage, teachers and families on, okay, let them taste it and try it raw. And then trying it in different recipes because, you may be this way too. You may like something fresh, but you don't like it cooked or vice versa.
Vice versa, yeah.
Right. And so there was a lot of that. And so we saw that. We saw an increase of them drinking water over sugar sweetened beverages, increase in physical activity, moderate to vigorous physical activity. And you're in the gardening and horticulture business, and
Yes.
I mean we
very
can work up
physical.
a sweat.
It's very
right?
physical. Very, very physical. My guys work
And-
very hard. Yeah.
Right, you work hard and you're outside, and so we saw increases in those areas in positive ways. We saw reach into the home. So kids gardening at home with their families. We saw parents becoming more engaged at school with their children. We saw them making recipes at home. A big thing related to screen time is that we've seen reduction in screen time for kids that participate in the program. And so that is a huge thing because, the screens are everywhere, right? And so getting kids outside where they're planting things, doing things, and exploring gets them off those screens. And this has kind of become such a huge issue, I think, of study. A&M actually has a center that's a Center for Health and Nature. And we've done some projects with them as well, but their work really is looking at what kind of impact does nature as global as a whole have on overall health. So physical health, mental health, stress reduction.
Do you remember, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but do you remember any of the statistics on that? Or do you remember some of the numbers they've come out with, like, hey, there's a 20% reduction in stress or
Yeah, I
anxiety?
don't remember the specific numbers. They have a lot
Yeah.
on their website.
Okay.
Dr. Jay Maddock is the director of that program, and it's fascinating.
I'll be going to check it out today.
Yeah, the work that they do is incredible. And, I think it just adds to the body of knowledge that, okay, we've got to get people outside. It's not just children. I mean, I obviously work in the area of K through 12, right, with children programming, but it's important to get adults outside. I mean, some of the work that they've done have been, with older adults, also neighborhoods, the importance of creating neighborhoods and spaces for people to be able to walk and experience nature outside, and all the things, right, to
Yeah.
get them outside.
Yep. I've got 3 awesome boys. They're awesome. They're hilarious and they're very active. They're great kids. But when they're outside playing, or if they're just outside hanging out, I'm outside. Like, I want to just be with them. Sometimes I don't even be playing with them. A lot of times I am. But there's times I just go out and literally watch them. And like, just because they're outside doing their thing, I'm outside. Now, I'm trying to get outside a lot anyway. But it's, and the vice versa. Sometimes I'm outside and it brings them out. But I mean, I think it absolutely starts with the children. I mean, that's a great approach, is like, let's get these kids excited about being outside and gardening, and just getting outside, even if it's not in gardening, but getting outside. It's going to bring their whole family. I think eventually,
Sure.
they're going to be asking, where's he at? What's he doing
Well,
outside?
and I think for parents, it's modeling that. You're modeling that with your boys, and we see that whether we want kids to garden or we want children to try something new, if you're not willing to do that, your children are not going to be as likely to do that. And so being able to model those, behaviors, I mean, like we all know, right? We know what we need to be doing, right? But
We do.
sometimes we just don't do it. And so, helping ourselves to like, look, I mean, if I don't want my kids to be on the phone all the time, I have to be willing to put it down, right?
Right.
And be able to have that one-on-one
Yeah.
conversation with them. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things, like I would say as a whole, as a part of our program that we really try to include is obviously there's learning experiences that they learn, and it's all very hands-on and applied, and they're touching, feeling, exploring, watching things grow. But there's also this idea of giving back, right? And so they have to do some kind of community service project related to their gardening experience. And we feel like that's important because it for children, it helps them to know, you know what? It ain't all about you.
Mhm.
It's not all about you, right?
Right.
And to get them out and becoming aware in their community. Okay, what are needs in our community? And, you may think, well, what can a elementary student do? You would be surprised.
It would be, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a group down in the lower Rio Grande Valley that had a junior master gardener program in one of the colonias. And so these were a lot of immigrant families that were, together. Our county extension employees there did a lot of programming in those communities, and no running water, no electricity, lots of poverty, a lot of diabetes in the populations just because of diet. And so this JMG program, the kids were like, okay, we want to start garden in our area. So they did that. They also did this big recycling thing because they said our stuff is not pretty. We want to be able to recycle and to do, things to beautify our neighborhood. Well, their group won our Texas Junior Master Gardener Program of the Year.
Wow.
And we brought the kiddos up here, and we couldn't bring all of them, but we brought like 6 of them up here. And our county extension agent, there was an AmeriCorps volunteer that worked with them. And Justin, these kids had never been anywhere outside of like their area. They'd never swam. They'd never stayed in a hotel.
Oh, wow.
We got them swimming trunks so they could get to experience that. And that was pretty cool. And one young man was the junior master gardener of the year. And he was 9 years old, and he's the one that was the brainchild on a lot of the projects and stuff that they did. And our county agent at the time, she said, Lisa, when I went to his house, said his father died from diabetes. And so single mom, children, all the stuff. She goes, because of him being in that program, she got involved in our Growing Growers program, which was for women, really empowering them to be able to start their own business and grow things for the farmers market and stuff. And she goes, you go in their house, no running water, no electricity. And she goes, you know what's on the wall in their little house? His junior master gardener certificate.
Wow.
And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. That's an amazing story.
That's why I do what I do. And years later, he went to college, right? I mean, he didn't major in horticulture. Who cares?
Right.
Right? I mean, the
there.
fact that because of that he thought, you know what? I can do it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean about growing good kids. I mean, it's about gardening. It's about horticulture. It's about all the stuff. But ultimately, that's a tool, to reach the kids.
Yeah. I think you're taking your own advice pretty well. You're, find something you love to do. It's pretty obvious how passionate you are, but find something you love to do and you won't work a day in your life kind of thing. And I think that's what you're telling your students, but you have to also, live that life, and it's pretty clear you're doing that. So good job, excellent job. So
Yeah.
tell me more about the program, if you will. Like I know you've started some new programs just recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, we have, a lot of our programs are school based programs. So we do a lot of work with teachers and educators that want to do gardening in their classrooms. And particularly, as teachers are more in middle school or high school, they may have more of a science background, but particularly our elementary teachers, the thought of having a garden can be a little intimidating. So I tell them our job is to remove fog, fear of gardening.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And so our job is to remove fog and to get them out. So we spend a lot of time on professional development for teachers and youth educators for them to feel comfortable in being able to go out and garden, whether it's growing in a container, if it's doing a raised bed. I tell them start small. You don't have to have a huge thing, right,
Right.
to be able to get started. We have a lot of different curricula to support teachers or youth educators that want to use the program, whether it's school based or after school or summer camps. We kind of have a core curricula that focuses on, I would say, all aspects of horticulture. So plants, how they
Go ahead and show, go
grow.
ahead and
Yeah.
show the books. I
So
want you
this
to.
one is like plants, how they grow, soils, water, ecology, bugs. I mean, all
Is that for a
this.
high school? Is that for like a
No,
elementary teacher?
this is for elementary teachers,
Okay.
and we have a corresponding children's handbook that goes with it. And then we have some thematic curricula that really are built around certain themes. So, like Learn, Grow, Eat, Go obviously integrates gardening and nutrition and physical activity. Wildlife Gardener, we have a lot of schools that are interested in habitat gardening or pollinator gardens. And so that project, we partnered with the National Wildlife Federation. And so, they learn about how to build a habitat garden and then what kind of things would come to a habitat garden, birds and insects and all the things they might find. And then their service project is we encourage them to actually build a habitat garden at their home, at their school, in their community, and they can register it through the National Wildlife Federation. So that's kind of a cool thing. This is one called Literature in the Garden. And I will tell you, this particular book, particularly in the lower grades, a lot of the teachers utilize books as an instructional tool, like storybooks and things. So this particular curricula features 6 children's books, and then there's gardening-based lessons that go with the books. And they love that. And because of that, nearly all of our other curricula, we incorporate children's books. Age appropriate for the targeted audience for that curricula so that it integrates reading and writing and those kinds of things. We actually even do a National Book Awards program that we partner with American Horticulture Society, being able to recognize authors and publishers of outstanding children's literature. And so the cool thing about gardening is we think about science, but it also is a great tool for teaching math, for teaching social studies, language arts, reading. It's just a great background to tie in a lot of those academic components. And it's not learning from a worksheet, right? They're outside, they're doing it, they're experiencing it. And so that part I think is pretty important. So we have curricula from 4 and 5-year-olds. So we have a preschool curricula that focuses on Learn, Grow, Eat, Go as well. And then we have elementary curricula. And then we go through middle school with our curricula. And then our high school, we have a number of high school programs that use junior master gardening. And some of the ways they use it is they may incorporate some of the hands-on part even with high school students because it's fun, but they also have those high school students work with younger students
Yeah.
so that they get to have that experience of being a leader, being able to share what they've learned. So that part is pretty cool. We have our curricula in English and in Spanish. So here in the US, a lot of our states having curricula that's in Spanish, particularly the things that go home, like letters to parents and things that parents could do to be engaged. All of that's in Spanish as well. And then internationally, we've done a lot of work with the Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture. And Dr.
Tell me more about that. I'm not familiar with that.
Dr. Borlaug was a research scientist in plant breeding. He was not from Texas. I think he grew up in Iowa, but he is credited with his research saving more people from hunger
Oh,
than
wow.
anyone else. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won the Congressional Medal of, I'm going to get this wrong, of Freedom. I mean, he's won all of these awards for his work. And so his institute is here. And the work of his institute is really to help the people, right? And so a lot of their work is in developing countries or places to help them to be able to have food and to be able to develop businesses to help make them sustainable. Because, his comment is that if people are hungry, how can you expect them to stop fighting if they're hungry, right? And so he was all about taking the work that the university does to the people. And so his institute and his name is actually housed here at Texas A&M. And so a lot of the work they do, the research they do, and the work they do internationally, it's managed through their
I'm
program.
gonna look that. Yeah, I'll definitely do some research on that. I actually had not heard of him, which is maybe silly on my behalf, but I'm definitely gonna be looking that up.
Read about him. It's amazing.
He sounds like an amazing person.
If
Yeah.
you go to the U.S. Capitol, there's statues in the Capitol, and I think each state is allowed to statues to commemorate someone of significance for their state. He's one of them
Oh, wow.
that's there.
Yeah.
So he's just, his work isn't very inspiring. So we do a lot of work with them, and currently we have a huge project with them in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm actually going in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow. Exciting.
So we have 31 schools there that have started junior master gardening programs, and we have I think about 1,700 children that have gone through the curriculum program. We did training for teachers online, and it's 11 to 12 hours difference depending on daylight savings time. So we would train them from 1 to 5 in the morning here, right? Because that was convenient time for them. And so we translated curricula into Russian and to Kyrgyz, and we created videos and we created
Wow.
instructional
A lot of work.
support. Yeah, it was a lot. But so exciting. And the thing I'm really happy about is the Ministry of Education for Kyrgyzstan has approved it nationally. So they're
It's
wanting
growing.
to take it to all the other to all the other schools. And so, it's heartwarming to see the kids growing their vegetables, and they're integrating with the school cafeteria programs where they're harvesting it, and then they're able to serve it and have it for children at the school. So that's pretty cool.
That's very cool. Think how many people in this world, and by the way, it's a small number, but how many people in this world that have been on this rock for even in their life have actually been able to do something that literally went global like you did? Think about that. I mean, have you ever thought of that? Just, I mean, think about how you've had an impact. Not, I mean, some people don't even make an impact in their town. You didn't make an impact in your town, your state, your country, and now the world. I mean, have you ever thought of it like that? Like you actually made an impact worldwide? I mean, how many people can say they've done that? It's very few.
I mean, again, I just feel incredibly grateful. I feel incredibly grateful and incredibly blessed to been able to, um, have an idea and be able to see it through, and that to work for a place that allows me the freedom to be creative, right? And innovative. And I think that Texas A&M and A&M AgriLife Extension really encourages our employees to be that way, right? I mean, what can we do? I mean, it's Texans serving Texans. Our job, service is in the name, right? And so it is all about what can we do to make a difference. Our county staff are doing that in their communities. I mean, across Texas, we have, I think close to 70 counties, right, that have active, very, very active junior master gardening programs. A lot of them doing Learn, Grow, Go because of the nutrition focus. Well, it's working in those communities, not because of anything Lisa's doing, but because there's teachers that are helping, there's county extension employees, we have adult master gardener volunteers that are giving of their time to go work in schools to help children to learn. We reach, we average about 1 million children annually in direct programming across the world. I mean, Texas, United States, and world. And I mean, our office is pretty small. I mean, I don't have a huge staff, but what we have is people that are passionate and believe in training and helping others to be able to help themselves and their communities. And I think that's what we're charged with doing.
I appreciate your humbleness. I appreciate, but it's also, I mean, people, maybe when they're children, the same children that you're helping grow, but how many people, as a child, you maybe have this dream of you want to do something worldwide, or maybe you want to do something really big in this world. You're like, I'm gonna do something special for this world, and I think a lot of people have that thought. Like, when I grow up, I'm gonna do something great for this world, you did it. I mean, you did it, and I mean, how many people have had that thought? It's millions, but actually went and made it. You did it. It's
Wow,
really
you're kind. I think some of it is to not be afraid when you're given an opportunity. I've thought many times, what would have happened if I'd have said, I don't think I can go teach at a prison,
right. Yeah,
right? I mean, what would have happened?
but, yeah. We
Or
might not be sitting here.
right. I mean, so some of it is, um, you know, it's okay to kind of jump into area that maybe you're not totally comfortable, right? And you don't know exactly what to do. I mean, I think that even with our children, being able to teach them to be um, resilient and flexible. I mean, it's all the things because,
Right.
it's very difficult. Um, I think kids sometimes feel like they have to do things perfect, right? And adults, I think sometimes we get in this, if we can't do it perfect, then we don't need to do it. We learn a lot from our failures,
Right.
right? We learn a lot from our failures. And, this was not an all roses free. I mean, you know what I'm saying? All
Yeah, I'm sure
roses
you.
thing. I mean, we had challenges that we had to that we had to work through, and we still have some, but again, you keep the mission in mind. What's our mission? Our mission is to grow good kids.
Very good. I noticed a theme that was throughout. Kind of, I've talked to Dr. Wamboshin, Shim. Very interesting. I mean, talk about his vocabulary, by the way, was
Yeah.
off the charts. Like half, I was like, I got a lot of it, but some of his vocabulary are words that the average human being does not know. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But Dr. Ong, again, a very impressive guy. Very excited about his department. You've got some, really impressive people here. And so, but I've noticed the theme is from all of them is that they want to get into urban areas in particular and get urban kids and start getting them in working in the soil, planting. And they said that, it's been shocking how many of these kids have never planted a thing in their life or never even worked in the soil. And, like we used to have a very rural community, and as the United States over time, obviously it's switched to an urban, and now those urban areas are growing where there's no crops. There's some places no grass. I mean, there's no turf, there's nothing.
Right.
And so, which I think is very interesting, but I want you to kind of talk about that if that's kind of part of your theme as well, or it just seems like it's a common theme amongst a
Yeah.
lot of your professors here.
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, our work is where the people are, and you look at where the people are, and
They're
the people
urban.
are
Yeah,
the
they're
people are in
urban.
the urban areas, right?
Right.
And so, but you're right in that, we've got kids that haven't planted things. We have their parents that haven't planted things. And sometimes we have their grandparents that haven't done those things. And so, being able to create those experiences, a lot of ours are school based because schools are community based, right? And so it's a place where families can come with their children and participate. But I also think it begs the importance of why we need to have green spaces in general. I mean, we need to have more parks, we need to have more walking trails, we need to have places where families can go outside and experience nature together. And so I think, I mentioned the Center for Health and Nature. A lot of their work also is kind of in that area. What can we do um, from a design perspective, right, in urban areas to encourage, the planting of more plant material around buildings, right? To have sidewalks, to have areas where people feel safe to go out and be in nature and exercise and those kinds of things. And to be real frank, some of our communities are not real conducive to that. And
Yeah.
so if you live in an area and you don't feel like it's safe for your children to go outside, well, parents are going to let their kids go outside, right? And so I think that, we're kind of one part of that potential solution, but I think there's a lot of other players that can be a part of that. We have a pretty big project with Houston ISD, and Betty Wiggins is the director for their school nutrition and cafeteria programs, which you can imagine for a school district the size of Houston, like how huge and
Yeah.
the
Massive.
responsibility is. But she's passionate about kids having a personal relationship with their food and know where their food comes from. And she came to Houston from Michigan. She worked with Michigan State up there with their, um, you know, horticulturist and ag group. She started a school gardening program there. So, boy, we were lucky to get her to come here because, we didn't have to convince her, right? I mean, she was like, I am all in. And so she started through her group, Makawa Farm, which is a school-based farm that
Interesting.
they do field trips, they do opportunities, they're growing things. We've done a number of junior master gardener teacher training programs through her office.
Can you spell that for me? Can you spell the name of the farm that she's created?
Makawa. Oh my goodness. I can't remember.
It might have
Okay.
been. That's not a fair question.
I'll
I'll
get
look
it
it
to
up.
you, but it's incredible.
I would love to interview him. I'd love to sit down
Yeah,
with them. That's a great. What
the
a great.
work that they're doing is amazing. They've gotten a National Farm to School grant. We helped with, writing a letter of support for them, but just some of the work related to, you know, providing teacher in service, providing opportunities for students to do field trips. They hire some of the high school students to help at the farm, and anyway, she's a real visionary, I think, and it's a pleasure to work with her and others within. And that's an example of a very large school district that's doing some pretty amazing stuff. In fact,
I hope she watches this, and I would love to sit down with her and promote what she's doing. I really would. I think if we
yeah,
can get that
she
out there.
she is she is one of the most inspiring. I mean, she's so inspiring. I mean,
Love to meet her.
her
Staying a
work
lot from a person like you.
her work is incredible. Well, just Google and read about
Yeah,
Betty Wiggins.
I'm
She's
going to.
amazing. We do a national, well, it's actually international online conference every year at the end of February, and we used to do it in person, but it's so hard for people with travel. And then when COVID hit, I mean, then that kind of shut everything down. So we do it online. We have a huge group of people that come. We have information on our website about it, jmgkids.us. It's at the top. But Betty is one of our keynote speakers. Dr. Maddock, who's the director for the Center for Health and Nature, he's one of our keynote speakers. And then we have all these breakout sessions, and it's really targeted for teachers, educators, parents, anyone that's working directly with children, to help them with getting started. So we have a whole track on curricula, and all the different curricula offerings that we have and how they might could utilize it. We have a track on implementing and building sustainable programs, right? We have one on growing healthy gardens and healthy children. So a lot of these individual tracks, and the great thing with it being online is we record everything. The people that participate, they can see all of the sessions. So it's just a neat way for us to be able to kind of maximize our efforts. Our coordinator in Kyrgyzstan is one of our keynote speakers. He's going to talk about the work that's being done there and highlight some of the programs. We do virtual field trips in different parts of the world. So, our teachers can see successful programs in different locations, because I think that's inspiring too. Because if you're just getting started, you're like, oh crud, I don't know, and you look at this empty schoolyard and you're like, I have no idea what to do. But you just get started. You plant a seed and you just get started. I mean, start small. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. I think sometimes that can be intimidating. People go and visit a botanic garden or a really beautiful place and they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I couldn't do that. You don't have to do
You
that.
don't have to do that, no.
No, I mean, get outside and plant stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Get outside and plant stuff.
I agree. Well, you have is it rain fence or water fence? Is it called a rain fence?
Yeah, water fence.
And that was created by youth. Was that not, I believe, a child?
Yes, in California.
In California, created that, I believe.
Yeah, as part of it's actually as part of a science fair project, and came up with this idea, and now it's marketed. It's a business, and it's built inside the fence. And so in neighborhoods,
yes, fantastic.
If they have homeowner restrictions for rain barrels or things like that, this is pretty cool way to store it.
It's still beautiful. It's actually it looks good and it's very functional. So pretty intelligent.
I think too that we need to remember the power of youth, power of youth. It's just like the young man I told you starting all those projects in the valley. Kids can do so much if you just let them, right? I mean, stop hovering over them.
Yeah.
And let them be creative. Let them fail, right? You learn by doing, oh, that didn't work. What could I try to do it different? And so, a lot within our curricula, they do experiments and they do things. And some of it is to say, okay, here's a problem. How could we fix that problem? And having them really problem solve and come up with solutions. And I mean, that ties directly into STEM education, which we want kids to be able to be critical thinkers and stuff like that, not just regurgitate information.
Right. Well, I think, again, I'm going to go back to the devices and the screens, but again, the studies are out and it's shown that their creativity is less because they don't have to think. They're being told how to think or what to think, and all that creativity that they're seeing on the screen, which is truly, it is a lot of amazing creativity that somebody else created.
Sure.
But you're not using your own, you're not using that third eye, if you will.
And not all technology is bad,
but,
no. But I think it's so important, particularly for younger children, that we monitor what they're seeing, and it cannot replace this.
No. Well, getting outside is proven, like just getting outside and working in a garden, planting, even simply walking around bare feet in your grass is proven to outproduce. You have more unique ideas and thoughts that they've already shown that the child's brain is developed slower or less, or not at all. I shouldn't say not at all, but slower or less when they're on the device too much, versus where they've seen a massive increase in that prefrontal, cortex, I believe it is. I'm not a neurosurgeon. When you're outside, and when you're outside, and when you're just, does that make sense? I mean, I think these kids, by getting them in the garden, you can say, hey, we're going to get them outside. We're going to get them to, doing your programs. But there's another aspect of that, like you said, they're going to be using their imagination, which is we don't want to dampen that. We do not want to dampen that imagination.
It's free time outside. I think sometimes I remember when I was a kid, I mean, we'd go outside and we'd be out there we'd be out there all day, you know. Mother would do a thing of Kool-Aid
Yeah.
and we'd have our drinks or a deal of water. We'd drink out of the water hose and we were on our bikes and we were, you know, exploring. We were trying to build forts. We were doing all this stuff, you know, on our own.
Right.
Right. And it's unstructured play. And I think that that's really important. And the research really shows,
Yeah.
you know, that too. But I mean, for us, we're excited that, you know, kids, one of the things that we saw is that kids, it was almost 70% of the children said that having the garden at school made them want to come to school.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So when you have that, schools love it because why? Their funding is based on attendance. So if you got kids that want to come because
I hope
of the
every
gardening
school out
program.
there is listening to this right now. I mean, how important it is for these. I mean, imagine if every school had a garden. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be much. Just get a garden. 70% of the kids say they want it. That's an amazing number.
Yeah.
That one needs to be heard. That one needs to get out there a lot.
Yeah.
So,
And like 67% of the kids, and you know, we do a pre and post of the kids that participate in the program. And they said they share their gardening experience with somebody else. Well, how cool is that? The multiplying effect of them sharing their gardening experience. Almost 3/4 of the kids said that their families either started gardening or they started cooking the vegetables that they grew at home with their families in recipes. Well, that's amazing too, you know, because it's not only being outside together, but you know, family mealtime. I mean, there's a lot of research on how important family mealtime is. We have a program with an extension called Dinner Tonight, and we do a lot of collaborative things with them because, you know, we're growing it, but we're also wanting to encourage parents that you can do it, right? There's simple recipes. Get your child involved in helping you with food preparation. It doesn't have to be difficult, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And I think that fear of gardening, right? That fog, there's also some of that with cooking and other things because they haven't been taught, you know. I think about my grandmother and my mother. I mean, they taught me how to do those things, you know. We always had a garden and I remember shucking corn and shelling peas and freezing them and putting them up and, you know, learning how to make bread in my grandmother's kitchen and kneading it and, all, you know, all this stuff. And I didn't realize how blessed I was growing up that way until I got older. You know, I mean, I think I told you earlier, there's a country western song called Mama's House.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me laugh because there's parts of it. But, you know, it talks about, you know, front doors having a screen and front porches having a swing and the backyard having a garden and all this stuff. And I'm like, that was it. That was it, you know, and that wouldn't this world be a better place if every town had a Mama's house?
Yeah.
You know? And I think as adults, we have to look at ourselves and, you know, my kids are grown. I had my first grandbaby. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
But
Congratulations.
but being able to at every point in your life, you can do something to pour into somebody else.
Yes.
Right? At every point in your life. And for some of the kids that we work with in these schools, you know, they have parents that work, their grandparents don't live anywhere near them. So, wow, if we can connect them to loving adults, right, that want to pour into them. In a lot of our communities, it's adult master gardener volunteers, but it could be other volunteers and other people that really have a passion or interest in working with children and getting them out in nature and getting them outside gardening. The world would be a better place.
I agree. I love a lot of the things you're saying. I know that at my house, we try to have dinner every night. It doesn't always work out because my sons are incredibly busy, but sometimes we have to wait. Sometimes we have to have dinner early. Sometimes we have dinner, but we wait. And we have certain rules, like there's no devices at the table. Like we try to, and then we try to make sure that if we can, we try to help out together. We try to eat outside as much as we can, you know, just to sit outside, even if it's just getting that evening, you know, just a little bit of light, but we try to do that as a family. And I also encourage my boys, I'm like, just please understand this is a tradition that I need you guys to carry on, because I need you to there's times when my kids, my boys will say, Dad, can I be excused from the table? And I'm like, no.
No, no.
I'm
Good for
like,
you.
no. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, because I want to look at you. I'm just going to look at you. And I'm just happy to have them there. And I do more than just look at them, but we talk. And, but now they know they'll get done eating and they kind of look at me like, can I go? Or are we talking tonight? And I'm like,
But they'll remember that.
100% will. Yeah.
In our Learn, Great, Go curricula for the early childhood, we have a whole thing on table talk for parents. And it's just things that families can do to encourage conversations. Because, and when kids get older, how was school today? Fine.
Right.
What'd you do? Nothing. So thinking about, okay, what can you ask? I mean, when our kids were growing up, we played high low, and everybody had to play. You say your high point of your day and your low point of your day. Or maybe it's asking more thoughtful questions, tell me what you did today to help somebody else.
Yeah. It's interesting that I didn't know you prior to this interview at all. We didn't talk about our backgrounds, but it's crazy how similar a background we had. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I grew up with like grandma, and just like you said, the screen door, and always having a garden. We had a garden as a kid. I grew up on a farm, middle of nowhere. I mean, I think the nearest McDonald's was probably 40 miles away or something like that. I mean, we were rural, and I'm glad. I grew up farming, had to work very hard for my father. Whether it be cattle, hogs, or just out in the field, that was just expected. And at the time, it was like, this is work. And now I'm like, I was really fortunate to have those things.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
at the dinner table, I ask every night is, tell me something good about your day. I'm just trying to get them to remind them. But I ask them every night, my sons, and I make them go around like, tell me at least one good thing about your day today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's other questions I'd ask, but I ask it pretty much every night when we have dinner, just because I want to get their mind on track and make sure they remind themselves how they're lucky, they're blessed, they're fortunate to have gratitude, all the things. I think the word gratitude is kind of overworked by some people, but that is a very important thing, even though I think it's become unfortunately cliche because people are trying to act like they have it when they don't. But I think you have to have it, and if you you have true gratitude.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that, it's interesting that our backgrounds were immersed inside, soil. I mean, they were around soil.
We have our family ranch has been in our family in Texas since the mid 1850s.
That's really cool.
Long time. We raised cattle, and I started riding a horse when I was probably 3. We worked cattle by horseback when I was little bitty, but I mean, that was my experience growing up. I mean, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I went to a small school. Everybody knew everybody. My mom was a school teacher. My dad actually worked for Extension. He was a county extension agent in our county. And I saw him and her and how they poured into people through their work and just through who they were. Faith was important in our home. People were important in our home. Helping others was important in our home. And I just think we have to get back to that, and
You've done
it. If a garden can be a place to help us teach that for children, I think that we can say we've been successful.
Agreed. Well, I know we've got to wrap up here. How can people help you? Like, is there a donation? I mean, is there a website? If somebody wants to help, I mean, I hope people are inspired by you in many ways. I mean, for their children and for what you've done, but how can we help you? How can other people help you? I mean, what do they got to do to help the junior master?
Well, first go to our website. It's jmgkids.us, or you can Google Junior Master Gardener and it'll pull up. Our program, I mean, we rely a lot on external funding for people and positions. We have an account through the A&M Foundation. There's a button there that if you want to give. I know, sometimes at the end of the year, people are looking for end of the year giving. Our funds go to support educator training, teacher in service, curricula for schools. I mean, that's a real tangible way that folks can help us. Another way is if you want to volunteer in your local community, our county extension offices, let them know, hey, do you have a junior master gardener program? Could I help? Or if you yourself would like to start a program with a group of kids in your neighborhood, in your school, there's information online.
Do you know if there's one in Tarrant County?
Oh, yes.
There, as I said, I'm pretty sure there is, but all right, I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, our Tarrant County Extension Office is wonderful, and our horticulturist there has offered several trainings and stuff. So yeah,
I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, it's great. And, having people being willing to start groups is important. So like if there's not a garden at your child's school, wow, well, we have the tools to help you to get started. And we view our job in Extension is to help people to be able to have tools they need to be able to get started. So we hope we've done that.
You've done a great job. Learn, grow, eat, go. Very good. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
You've been awesome.